Welcome to the Sixsess Consultancy's Just Great People podcast, the podcast that introduces you to ordinary people who've done extraordinary things. My name is Barry Eustance, and I'd like to introduce you to today's guest. Hi, everybody. It's Barry Eustance here from the Sixsess Consultancy Just Great People podcast. Really excited today to have Tony Underwood from Believe Solutions join us to tell you a little bit about himself, his career. Tony, as you probably know, was a British Lion international rugby player. He then went on to a stellar career flying super jumbos around the world and has a lot more to tell you about. So I'm not going to delay any further. Tony, welcome to the Just Great People podcast.
Barry, thank you very much. And on one of those, not quite the super jumbo, one of the big ones was where I met your kind self and you looked after me in the left-hand seat and showed me how to do it. So thank you very much for that. Lovely to reconvene now, all these years later. Too many that I'd like to say, but yeah, thank you very much.
Well, Tony, that's my pleasure. For disclosure, Tony and I flew to Shanghai and other places together when we were flying the Airbus A340-600 for Virgin Atlantic. So, Tony, tell us what's happened since. Lots happening.
Well, the standard of captains has gone downhill, as you'd probably imagine, Barry. Definitely the repartee on the flight deck hasn't been quite the same. But no, so yeah, kindly went on. I did EasyJet before Virgin, ended up at Virgin. Then after that, went on to Emirates to fly the Airbus 380, the super jumbo, the double decker one, if everyone sees that. And with Emirates, and I was with them for 7 or 8 years. Then COVID hit, and like a lot of people, lives got turned upside down. Ours was one of those. Anyone who was in the aviation industries knows how much it was affected. We got grounded for a long time, and along with quite a lot of us made redundant from Emirates and made a decision when they asked us to go back. Most did. I actually made a decision that, I wanted to move forward. So the 3 or 4 years that I've had since then has been a big transition period. And it's ended up with a real sort of sense of bringing together what I've learned from my time in aviation, and obviously kindly saying with the rugby side of things, when you're at the elite end of both of such disparate sort of organizations, what's the sort of thing that brings it all together? What are the themes that are relevant in both of those that you can apply in all so many other areas of your life? The area that I've really sort of honing in on is essentially how we can benefit communities in a lot of ways, with investment being used better in this world of social value or CSR spending or B Corps. Companies just wanting to do more and do it better in their local communities. We help them to do that.
And it's got to be asked, how helpful was the experiences that you had? I mean, we've got your time as a professional rugby player, as an international rugby player, your career through the pilot progression system. What are the key elements that you would pull out that have brought you to this point and actually took you to the extraordinary destinations that you achieved in your previous careers, both rugby and flying?
The commonality that you see in whether you're playing rugby for right at the highest level, whether you're flying aeroplanes at the highest level, or whether you're trying to work as an organization in a community in a better way, and how do you get communities sort of functioning as best as we can? And the common theme is people and how you develop people from the aspect of as an individual, or as a team, or as an organization, or as a community. And the common theme is that, how do you get the best out of each other and out of ourselves? And how do we function well with each other? How do we get the best out of each other? And for me, what underpins it is this word care, a real care for self, a care for others, and a sense of how that translates into behaviours and your values, and whether that's you as an individual, you as a leader, if you're able to influence people, or you and any impact you're trying to have as an organisation and a community. It's around this word care.
And it's a word that seems sadly lacking as we look around us geopolitically and look at what's going on in the Middle East and in Europe at the moment and elsewhere. Does that come from leadership? Where does that sort of that kernel of care? Where does the drive for that come? How is that imbued within you? Where was that? Was that as a child? Was that, or what were the key elements that brought you to that realization that care is the key?
Well, because I think the when I say you really say imbued in myself, I think that's the important point to raise. It's how do you show self care to get to be the most, and don't shy away from words like, I don't want you to, if I say the words high performing, I don't want the listener to sort of shy away from that, from just purely from the aspect of KPIs and winning and all that sort of stuff. I mean, just functioning to a level which you're aspiring to, and that keyword aspire, a sense of belief of what you're capable of, unleashing that. That's what self-care does, is unleashing yourself to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And then that translating into how you interact with others is how you allow and create an environment for others to be the best versions of themselves. And that takes care. It takes care because, well, are you actually bothered about the person that you're interacting with? Do you see them, validate them for the worth that they have and the value that they bring? Shows care, and that translates into tapping into the almost like the primeval needs we all have as people to feel valued, and that's what you're tapping into by showing care, and that's how you get the best out of yourself, and how you get the best out of others that you're relating. So you kindly said about, well, you mentioned about leadership. I think that's the lens to which optimal leadership that I've been under, or I've tried to operate with, and under your command as well, as an example of that leadership, was how you showed a sense of kindness and care towards that other person by how you interacted with them and provided an environment as a leader for them to be the best version of themselves they can. And that takes care. The people that, if you can think about it in that way, is the leaders who just want to command and conquer, if you like, rather than nurture and provide a sense of servant leadership. How do you create an opportunity for them to be the best versions of themselves can be? That takes care. It takes you to care about that person and what they can bring to whatever the environment you're operating in, whether it's as a parent, as a leader in an organization, on the flight deck of an aeroplane, or leaders in our communities. And
I mean, that's very, very resonant at the moment, isn't it? That we appear to be seeing a paucity of leadership globally, and the resultant lack of care that permeates from that. I'm interested to explore how, in, for example, the British Lions, that was reinforced. The whole care element of the leadership and the performance. I mean, here we're talking about the British Lions, high performing rugby players playing internationally against some of the best teams in the world and the biggest players with whom you had interaction, I know. How did that manifest itself in the Lions? Did you have a set of rules? What was it a process? What were the elements that actually nurtured a British Lion to be an outstanding performer? How did that work, and then how does that translate forward?
So the first lesson about care can be instructed in my answer to that I need to correct you. So I need to correct you because it's a very quick thing to do, and I can be guilty of it. It's not a British lion; it's a British and Irish lion.
I apologise to
And
the
not at all,
British Irish.
but it's an often made mistake. But you see how there's care involved in that, because very proud to be a lion, but very proud, as all my members were in that party, of who we represent. And caring about who we represent extends itself to making sure that we reflect that in how we call ourselves. So that's not a getting at you. It's an opportunity to again just show how care can manifest itself, and how your behavior, your language, everything you do shows care, and your attention to something as to some people might seem small, but you can understand as an Irish person, if you're missing out on that name, you care about that. So
Sure,
you need
of course.
that. That's why you need to care, and then because already you're shunning a great, and that party was a big element of that party were Irish. So you're shunning their contribution, and that you provided a good learning lesson. So. And that's how
I would add here, I have a large number of Irish friends.
There you go.
So whom I now apologise.
So that's, if you like, and this is what the beauty of Ian McGeechan and as the leader of that sort of as the coach of that of one of the tours I went on. Before we even really touched a rugby ball, we addressed care. We didn't use the word care. We didn't use the word vulnerability, but that you are vulnerable unless you care. Hence the Irish example that we just talked about. If you don't address the ways in which this party's cohesion, their togetherness, their unity could be challenged, where we are vulnerable as a group, then you're going to be falling on your face in a few weeks' time when you're meeting the big guns. Okay, so it's understanding the importance of how we. The way I describe it is sometimes it's people are always conscious about the technical capabilities of a team in terms of, what are your skills like? How good a player are you? How good a pilot are you? How good a manager are you? But the reality is, what's most important in all of those environments is, well, how good a leader are you? Or how good are you at bringing people together? So often the result of teams, whether they perform well or not, is less on what you're capable of doing together. It's how you work together and how you come together. And the ones that care, and they care about the details about, well, what could tear us apart? What could create fissures within this unity that we have? They're the ones that work the best. They're the ones that create the coalition where we really feel we're in it together. We really care about each other. We're less self-driven, by more selfless driven, because we're more geared towards what's best for all of us as opposed to one of us.
And that translates, doesn't it? That translates very readily to the experience we both had in the airline environment, where we had crew resource management, very much focusing on human factors, and that when we went in for our assessments in the simulator, the 2 days of ritual humiliation every 6 months, or the annual line check. The major element was not the technical skills that we had, which could be trained. It was the non-technical skills, what people often call these soft skills, which was about how you engage with the team, how you communicate with the team, how you embrace the team, and how the team embraces you. So very, very similar.
Yeah, indeed, because obviously, I know you're unreal at sort of picking apart incidents that happen down the road. But if you look at performance as a pilot, as opposed to as a rugby player, which is win or lose on the rugby field, I think there's more involved in sport than just winning and losing on a rugby field. But that's another conversation. But if you really boil down to it with flying, win or lose, ultimately just mean getting to the destination. It means getting to the destination. Literally living and dying is
Yeah,
the ultimate sort
absolutely.
of metric, if you like, about performance on a that we all want to ensure we stay on the right side of that ledger. Um, and that is why it's so important to have this side of things unpicked, because if communication, if unity, if teamwork breaks down for any reason, not just in the flight deck but in the whole aeroplane, or even the people we're communicating with on the ground pre the flight, any anything that can alter the ultimate destination of this flight can result in the breakdown of it. And unless you care enough about the importance about that, about what are the reasons that could create that breakdown, and very much the non-technical side of things is a major aspect about that. Could the person who's um, putting in the Bowser and putting the fuel onto the aeroplane, taking enough care about what they're doing in terms of the preparation before they butte it on? Are they getting what they ordered on this aeroplane or not? When they're packaging the sandwiches for the flight crew, in some remote station, miles away, completely removed from us, did they wash their hands before they packed their food? It gets
That's
packed,
correct.
and we end up
Yeah.
with salmonella on the flight deck and completely incapacitated flight. All those, do people care? Do people care with what they're doing with that because they realize the outcome of what's going to happen? That's what we're all vulnerable to.
And it's very interesting, Tony, that you align care and leadership. That they're in the same sentence. They're wrapped in the same wrapper, and it combines with another thread that we've often talked about, which is change and transformation.
Mm.
How great change and transformation is achieved, effective change and transformation is achieved when you trigger leadership throughout organizations or throughout environments. What you've just described to me gels very, very clearly with that, in that every element of the chain, the potential error chain in the airline environment requires leadership, doesn't it? You've got people who need to exhibit the leadership of care,
Mm.
to engage with the safe conduct of that entire ecosystem to the other side of the world.
Yeah, it's what you, if you're influencing something, and I'd flip that slightly as well to show that, we often talk, don't we, you and I, Barry, about this sense of leadership isn't just from leaders. What leadership can everyone show? When can they step in to show leadership? If you're a follower, how can I, as a first officer, a co-pilot, sitting with a captain, lead by example or modeling a sort of way of behaving that people can, can fill the breach, if you like, sometimes when maybe it's not being shown elsewhere. So it's for all of us to show leadership in our different ways, to ultimately understand what are the outcome we're looking for, what's the best environment we need to provide for us all to step into that and lean into that and perform in the best way we possibly can. And obviously the most direct way is, as a physical leader, what can you do to provide the culture which leads to the environment to which everyone is leaning into this, cares about it, cares about how they are showing up and turning up, is invested in what we're doing, to the extent where if something isn't happening, they show leadership by speaking up. And
Yeah, well, I mean, the Kegworth air disaster was a classic case,
mm,
wasn't it, where people didn't speak up,
mm,
could have spoken up, shown leadership, showed courage, because leadership very often takes courage, um, and it could have averted the wrong engine being shut down, which ultimately resulted in the accident. Um, and, and I think that's, if my understanding is correct, that's exactly what you're alluding to here.
yeah,
That
totally. You're part of that leadership is creating an environment where people are happy to speak up. You're happy to ask the silly question. Happy to, I'm not sure about something. Should I say something? Not made to feel like a dumbass, but made to feel like thankful for the contribution because you care. You care about the whole outcome, not about whether whether you feel stupid or not about saying something or silly enough, or you show weakness by I don't know the answer to that. I don't have an answer to that. I'll go and look it up. Or do you know what? I might have got something wrong. Admitting to it, and not well, admitting to it, but just speaking up when there are instances where there's a lack of assuredness about something. Will you speak up? And if you feel a mistake might have been made, will you bring it to everyone's attention so that we can deal with it? And it's all those areas where if it doesn't happen, that's when we're very, very vulnerable.
And that's actually an environment where the airlines really do stand out in terms of their encouragement of reporting of failures in the system, failures of individuals. Yourself, you can report yourself, which is actually a very cathartic thing to do, folks. I do recommend it for something that may have a safety implication further down the road. And that kind of psychological safety is very evident on board, where people can raise questions, do raise questions. I wonder, though, whether once the airplane's landed and it's on the apron, that permeates beyond the immediate environment of the airplane. That's a question for the airline listeners and viewers.
I'd actually go a bit further than that, Barry. And I've flown for a few airlines, and it's all, and maybe people can relate to this listening who aren't pilots, but essentially, policies and processes are there for us all, but often it can just be platitudes on a wall, or something to put in a HR directory of services, or something that you can assure authorities that you have something in place. But the reality is, the actual use of them, the implementation, the information gathering of them, how much does actually take place, will always be determined by the environment and the culture you're operating in. Because you can have that policy there, but it doesn't mean that someone's going to be speaking up if you've got the wrong culture there, and they don't feel safe. So psychological safety, you just mentioned, is probably one of the keyest things about showing care, because if you think about it from a corporate perspective, it's like you care enough about the whole organization's sort of sustainability, that you understand the importance of having psychological safety, because you're only as strong as your weakest link, if you like. And if you're not hearing from them and they're not given a safe space to be heard from, then that will be a downfall. And you mentioned Boeing earlier, but that's a classic example of what could befall a company if you don't provide a safe space for someone. There you go. That is the aviation industry. The biggest manufacturer there is.
And it does translate, Tony, right across outside the aviation industry. A cultural shift and drift away from core values can be a very, very, very slow process to recover. And essentially, the people right on the front line are very often the people with the great answers. And I think, having listened to you today, that the care element of leadership is really imbuing the sense that leadership is everybody's business.
Yes.
Everybody's business.
Yeah. And the reality is that, Barry, it's like, what do you care about? I mean, people if I use the word care, people can often respond in a very, that's fluffy, isn't it? Caring, that's love, and all that sort of lens of care. Well, caring can mean, what do you care about? It's making money. It's making revenue. It's whatever your aspect of performance in your own book, and it'll be different to all of us. We'll share some, okay, but that's what you've got to talk to. And so when I talk about self-care, is what's important to me, what's going to fulfill me, and what's my target, if you like, my goal, that I'm trying to, and that's what I care about. The beauty of this word is that in leadership, all you're doing is one, caring about this person rather than a widget, and you care enough to find out what they care about and providing an environment that allows them to perform into something that they care about. And we often talk about inspiring vision, don't we, and having a shared vision. That's what we do when we talk about a collective purpose, if you like, is where do we share a sense of what we care about? How do we create an environment where, we care about the same things? We have understood and got a clear understanding about what's important to all of us, not just me as the leader, but something that we share. And if you can tap into that, that's when you hit the magic, if you like. That's where the high performance happens. It's where you wear your own equivalent to the Lions badge on your shirt because it represents to you your equivalent for that. And by the way, dare I add, it's all well and good having a brand like the Lions. Sorry, I made my mistake. The British, well, no, I call it the Lions, not the British Lions. So you've got the Lions badge on, okay? But that Lions badge isn't enough. You've got something that represents the sort of idea of what you're aiming towards. But the reality is every tour I went on 2 tours. Each one was different because of the different people that were there. So the importance was identifying what's important to this lot. Why is this? What is unique and what is collective about this group of people as opposed to the ones I was working with 4 years ago? And so that's the difficulty that you have is understanding. But the advantage you have, and that's why I'll link it to the difficulty of doing it with the Lions is, if you think about the concept of the Lions, it's 4 countries kicking the proverbial out of each other for 4 years, putting that aside and coming together in the space of a few days to find a common purpose to take on the best in the world. You don't have that challenge. You're supposed to get on with each other, or you've got the opportunity to be working together rather than against each other for 4 years. Although the reality is some organizations might be operating in that way, but hopefully you don't. But hopefully you've got the ability to build on the sort of camaraderie you have with each other and have that chance to build on it over a period of time to find a real sense of collective purpose that then articulates, right, we understand that now. How do we move forward and take advantage of that to perform better as an organization?
There we are, folks. From the great Tony Underwood. Care, leadership, culture, compassion, and shared vision. Remember that when you're looking to build a high-performance team, because Tony knows all about it. We're going to be speaking to Tony again very soon, I promise you. Tony, thank you so much for today. It's been insightful, thoughtful, and inspiring. And I look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon on the Just Great People podcast. Thank you.
My pleasure, Barry. You take care. Take care.
Take care. So that's it for today's Just Great People podcast from the Sixsess Consultancy. We hope and trust you've enjoyed it. Please join us next time, and please do remember to subscribe. Thanks for joining us.